Two ways, right? I mean, you either just go down in the dumps and you sit in a dirty diaper for a while, you guys that got kids, and you just lay there. You just sit there, right? And it's miserable. Or you change your diaper and you get the hell up and you go. And so the motivation is respect, man.
Dan Campbell always away with words. RC, your reaction to what he said?
First off, you only have a dirty diaper when you take a crap on yourself. And that's exactly what the Detroit Lions did this year. And for Christmas, I was with my little niece, and she's like on the verge of being able to be potty trained. So she understands, right? And when she does it on herself, she comes tell you, right? Because she wants to be clean. That's what the Detroit Lions got to be. The Detroit Lions have to be aware of why they failed. The players on that team have to be aware of where they didn't execute, right? Brad Holmes has to understand, how do I build depth? Dan Campbell has to figure out, how do I get a better offense coordinator so I don't have to do it, so I can delegate, right? So I can distribute duties to who I need to distribute them to. And then now they got to get back to work of being better. But the first thing is acknowledging that you were below the line. And Dan Campbell knows that. Dan Campbell understands that. And the motivation is respect. Because if you remember when he took that job, that's one thing the Detroit Lions did not have. They now do have it. And how do you gain it back to the level you started with this season?
Yeah, and I work with Dan in Miami, and the one thing about what you just said, RC, no one's going to be higher on the Detroit Lions than Dan Campbell. And I think the biggest decision starts with the offensive coordinator, because to have sustainability, your guys are going to graduate. Aaron Glenn graduated, which is great news, right? And Ben Johnson graduated, and that's great news. So you have to have good coaches in the pipeline. So I think it starts with that. And then after that, I think at some point you have to try to balance this roster. They have great young players on offense. J-Mo, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown. But at some point, you're going to have to do more on defense. And you're going to have to take a long look at, hey, do we maybe trade one of those great young elite players to try to get another elite defensive player?
You still trying to trade Amon-Ra St. Brown?
What I'm saying,
he's trying to get Trey Hendrickson there.
RC, those are the conversations that are going to happen with Brad Holmes, which is we have limited ways to improve our team. That's why you see Micah Parsons traded. That's why you see Khalil Mack traded. When I was at the Jets, that's why we traded Keyshawn Johnson. You have limited ways to improve your roster, and sometimes you have to look at making very difficult choices. But they have to improve the defensive side of the ball.
So I agree with that, Mike, too. You got to get someone opposite of Aiden Hutchinson who can affect the quarterback at a high rate that makes things less strenuous on your secondary, I would say. Also, I think something else needs to be studied along this football team is, okay, why are guys getting injured so much, right? Like, do we need to do something different from a training perspective so guys can be healthy when we need them the most? It's 2 years in a row when you, I think in the biggest moments, you don't have key players on your football team because they're on IR or they're missing 2 or 3 games here and there. If you're Dan Campbell, if you're Brad Holmes, that's something you have to study. That's a part of the game as well, too, is making sure your best players are available to you when you need them the most.
I got a question. Is Dan Campbell going to go from sponsoring Applebee's to Huggies?
He could.
Well,
I mean, that'd be a big old diaper if he got to wear it, though. Nobody wants to see that.
I have 2 kids, and they out of diapers. But when he said that, I would think about them blowouts they used to have back in the day. And I was like, I don't.
Yeah, let's change the visual here. To the NFC East, where the Eagles have already locked up the division, but not their playoff seeding. Philly currently sits as the 3 seed in the NFC, but could move up to the 2 spot if 2 things happen. They have to beat the Commanders, and the Lions beat the Bears. That could be big. However, sources telling ESPN Nick Sirianni plans to sit all of his starters against Washington on Sunday. I know how you feel about this based on our conversation last week about sitting starters. Are they making a mistake here to not have Jalen Hurts in the offense and all those defensive starters play?
Yeah, look, I understand why they're resting him. I do think there's some continuity that matters, RC. I mean, silly me that, you want players to actually play in the game, silly me. But look, there's an interesting phenomenon going on in college football. 5 teams over 2 years had a bye. All 5 lost. So, again, we'll learn a lot more today about those 3 teams and whether or not that continues or if that's aberrational. All my point is, you want to be at your best a week from Sunday, right, or a week from Saturday. So I'm not saying Jalen Hurts has to play the whole game, and I understand why you want to rest him, but you also don't want to put yourself in a position like Ohio State did last night where clearly they weren't ready to go.
Man, we watched this team for 17 weeks. Them playing this week ain't going to change nothing. We ain't gonna know if the offense gonna catch passes, not gonna catch passes. We ain't gonna know if Saquon Barkley gonna have space, not have space, especially based on what you do against the Washington Commanders. What's gonna happen against the Washington Commanders is you're probably gonna play well on offense. You know why? Because everybody does, right? But is that worth getting hurt? Absolutely not. And especially coming off of a half where you ain't complete a pass.
Right.
Like, not one pass.
Correct.
Where your defense, though.
And that's hard to do.
The way your defense played out of his mind. You know what I want to do? Hey, guys, rest. Relax. Actually, I don't want you to think about playing good offense for a very long time. I want you to have an offseason. And maybe by the time we come back the next week, you'll forget just how bad you were in the second half against the Buffalo Bills. Health is the most important thing for this team. This team understands where they're going. They understand how to play in those moments. And playing against the Washington Commanders is not going to get a Super Bowl team more prepared than they should have been the entire 17 weeks previously.
So I agree with both of y'all, but I lean more towards Mike Tannenbaum, and here's why.
Why you call him by his whole name?
Because the 2 seed is still on the line, right? And when I look at the 2 seed right now,
Thanks,
the
Harry
Chicago
Douglas.
Bears would match up with the Green Bay Packers. If the Philadelphia Eagles are the 3 seed, they're going to match up with the Los Angeles Rams. If it was to end today, that's a matchup that I'm probably like, oh, hell, I got to go see Matthew Stafford again, who came into our house last year and had an opportunity to win if it wasn't for Jalen Carter and doing the thing that he's done. So with that 2 seed still on the line, because I do believe the Detroit Lions have an opportunity to beat the Chicago Bears. So with that 2 seed still on the line, that's the only reason why I would play my guys.
I wish they could just split it down the middle. Defense is playing great. You guys rest. Offensive starters, you guys need some work. Get out
Do
there.
y'all know how hard it is not to complete a pass in the second half?
Oof.
Man, that is
I did think the pass to Devontae was complete. That they called.
Oh, they called you.
I don't know. Listening to Nick Sirianni after that game, you would have thought they
still.
won.
Is Pittsburgh, right? Mike McDaniel and Cleveland might be the strangest fit of a coach and a team that you could possibly. You can't wear sunglasses and jogging pants on the sideline when it's -5 degrees in an AFC North matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, the two things just don't go together at all.
In fairness to Coach, though, he adopted all that swag when he became very Miami. So could he adopt whatever that version of Cleveland swag is? I don't know what you guys are doing over there in Ohio. It probably involves a lot more clothing, though.
Well, or some Browns players like to take clothes off the colder that it gets just to show how tough they are.
Ah, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. Nobody is impressed. Okay, nobody is impressed that you're playing without sleeves when it's 19 degrees. Like, nobody thinks you're more of a man.
It's a game of toughness, Amber, and if the cold scares you, then you don't belong on the shores of Lake Erie. I think if you replace Stefanski with McDaniel, I don't know how anybody could present that as an upgrade. Stefanski has not had a last good couple of years here in Cleveland, but I don't know if you've checked. McDaniel hasn't had a very good last couple of years in Miami. I'm with you. I think McDaniel likely continues as coach of the Dolphins. And I think the Browns are going to make a change. Where they turn, though, is going to be fascinating, Amber, because there is no Ben Johnson. There is no Mike Vrabel on this coaching market. And when they go and hire an unproven coordinator, look, I'm not going to crush that move because we all made fun of Liam Cohn, right? And he goes, Duval. And everybody thinks, oh, who is this weirdo that they – okay, here he is. Now, they're about to win their division. It looks like a great
He
hire.
should win Coach of the Year, even though he won't because Jags, but he should.
But you know, to win in Jacksonville is no easy feat, and he's awesome. You know, Mike McDonald
Kind of slaps now that I'm hearing it again, and also I know he's good.
Yeah, with 12 wins in his back pocket, all of a sudden we're all chanting Duval.
Right.
When you hire an unproven coordinator, it could be great. It could also be what Aaron Glenn has been for the first year with the Jets. So I'm going to try, and please hold me accountable to this, Amber. If they move on from Stefanski and they hire some coordinator who most people have never heard of, okay, I'm not going to blow up that move until I see how it actually plays out. But I just wonder how you could position it as an upgrade is all I'm asking. Based on a guy who's won 2 Coach of the Year awards and, you know, has in a market where winning has been really, really hard, not exactly, been Andy Reid, but he hasn't exactly been Hugh Jackson here either.
Right. It's not an upgrade, it's a change. And I think that that's probably what your market is looking for. Now, I think that's a dangerous game to play because if you're not upgrading, then certainly you could be downgrading, or it could just be a lateral move. And will the change in the coaching staff be the answer when really what you need is a quarterback? And what can any coach, no matter how good, do when he doesn't have a quarterback? Like you're talking about Jacksonville. Well, yeah, but Trevor Lawrence turns out to be okay, pretty okay, right? And so if you're able to take over a team in that situation, and that's just not the situation that the Cleveland Browns are in. If I'm Cleveland, I'm not moving on from Stefanski, but I do understand why the sentiment there at this point is frustration. In Steeler Nation, it's ridiculous. They want to get rid of Mike Tomlin, and he's going to be such a hot candidate if they did around the entire NFL. He'd had another job in 2 seconds. In the Browns situation, I do understand the frustration because I think the fan base is just so desperate for anything that they're willing to try any sort of change to try to accomplish a step forward. It's just a question of, is that really the change that even needs to be made to take a step forward? I wouldn't have much confidence that a new coaching staff is going to be the answer when I think really it's the personnel and offense that's such a major issue.
Amber, I don't disagree with anything you said, but the record matters. Stefanski is 7-26 in the last 2 years.
Would he get another job right away, you think?
No, not as a head coach. I know that Stefanski's agent wants you to believe that. There's a lot of scuttlebutt out there about, what a hot candidate Kevin Stefanski would be on the market. And I like Kevin. I don't mean this to come across as but the record is what it is. And I think it's really hard to present him.